This is Paul Nobles from eatperform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford. April, do you want to tell everyone hi?
Hi, everybody.
So we're going to do something a little different this week. What we're going to do is walk people through. We have a lot of new people because of the September challenge. And actually, people will probably be watching this later on. So it might not be September now, so it's not that big of a deal. But in general, like the idea of, how to walk through the initial stages of joining Eat to Perform, that's what we're sort of going to walk you through at this point. So, what I'm basically going to start from the very beginning, and then we'll talk through how that goes. So what happens is you decide, you've been watching it on Facebook or whatever, and so you decide that you're going to join Eat to Perform. And so you pull out your credit card, you buy the books, and then you get, there's two things that happen. There's a thank you page with your downloads. A lot of the times people click through those thank you pages, which is fine. Then their information is in their email. Sometimes they'll struggle with both of those things because they'll click out of it too fast or whatever, and then their email might go to spam. And so what we will typically ask somebody to do at that point is go to info@eatperform.com, and they will get those folks set up. And so one of the things that happens right off the bat, especially on the thank you page, is you'll have an invite to the forum, which is essentially where all the coaches live, and you will get an invite to the meal planning group on Facebook, along with your downloads. So that's where I want to start, because I think what happens for a lot of people is they just download the books and they start reading the books and they say, I'm so confused, I don't know what to do. That's not how we envisioned it, right? But it's sort of hard to have someone buy something and then not give them that something right there, right? And we've talked about this many times as a staff, because what we want you to do is to get in the forums. And so what happens when you go into the forums, there's a little part. April, do you know what the part is called? I think it's called Getting Started with Eat to Perform, but I could be wrong. I know that it's where you go and get your wave numbers.
If you go into the forum, on the third subsection, it's the Eat to Perform program. And if you click on the Need Help with TDE section, and then click in there, and then it's there is a pinned post at the very top for new members seeking TDE information, so forth. And if you click on that, there's a form in there, and you go in and fill that out. And basically, that's going to be your first stop right there. So go there directly, fill that out, and it kind of gets the wheels rolling for you.
Okay, so we already have kind of a little bit of a mix-up, because it's not called your TDE, it's called your wave numbers, and we sort of changed that. And the reason why we changed it was a way of explaining this to you guys, because what we wanted people to understand was the basis for how Eat to Perform works. And your wave numbers is the number that Eat to Perform is going to give you, that is going to be your plan. That's essentially what you're supposed to be eating. And so
I agree. I absolutely agree, but not to confuse them, it is still named in the forum, so they don't get confused. It is still named the TDEE for new members seeking their total daily energy expenditure.
Okay. Is that seriously not called Getting Started with Eat to Perform? Because that seems kind of dumb.
It is under the Eat to Perform program. So under the Eat to Perform program, which is the main section of the forum, there are 5 little subsections under that.
Okay. Can you tell me what those 5 subsections are called?
Those need help with TDEE macros, and then your MyFitnessPal review requests, general questions, webinars, registration links to join, and eatthismuch.com.
Okay. So, okay. So we need to talk about that. um, this is so frustrating.
Now, at the very top of the forum, you have news and facts, and there's the news, and then there's frequently asked questions. And in the frequency asked questions section, there is a welcome to Eat to Perform.
Right. So basically, in the forum that is called the total daily energy expenditure, which actually should be called the wave numbers, okay, yeah. That's essentially where everybody needs to go to start Eat to Perform. And after we do this video, we'll have a staff meeting, and I will fix the inconsistencies that were supposed to be fixed a long time ago. But for some people, the memo has not been getting there. You know, and I don't know why that wouldn't just be called getting started with Eat to Perform, because that would make things a lot easier for people. And so when people say this is really confusing or I'm overwhelmed, I sort of get why it's really confusing and they're overwhelmed, because, you know, it's not really simple. Now, I will say this, you know, we do have a host that reaches out to you. That's Chris Dietz. And so when you first join up into the forum, he gives you a message that basically walks you through a lot of this stuff. And so some of what, you know, we're sort of bickering about here actually ends up being a little bit more intuitive because of that communication. And more than anything, I think that you know, the what we're really sort of emphasizing to people is that there is a lot of resources. One of the things that when we first started Eat to Perform, there was a lot of books out there, and there were, you know, you could piece together some of what we were talking about, but in general, the support wasn't there, right? And the amount of people and the people walking you through that process. And so that's how we, you know, ultimately ended up with, you know, 53 coaches, because we wanted to have enough support in place for that type of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about your wave numbers, which is incorrectly labeled your total daily energy expenditure. And like I said, I will get that fixed tomorrow. And so if you're seeing this video, you're going to see that that section is going to be called Getting Started with Eat to Perform. And then it's going to say get your wave numbers or your total daily energy expenditure, rather than just to try and keep things consistent for most people.
I do think that's a great idea to consolidate everything all together.
Yeah. We've actually had this idea like a million times. We were supposed to delete the Eat This Much forum, you know, all these different things. I don't know why some of these things haven't happened, because, you know, we haven't done some of these things for a very long time. And so we'll try and get that sorted, make it a little bit more intuitive for new people coming in, because I think that's sort of frustrating, because what we really want you to do is not read the books, not you know, kind of really look at the books as almost like a manual. And then what happens is you get a survey, and that survey asks you various things, and then in that survey, the Eat to Perform coaches will actually give you your plan written out, right? And so let's talk a little bit about that part of things. So I think what happens for a lot of people when they first start Eat to Perform, they don't know whether they're overeating or undereating, right? So let's start there. So am I overeating? Well, a lot of people will mistakenly think that they're overeating if they have a little bit more fat to use, right? Because, you know, they're thinking with the same old mindset that, the eat less and do more mindset. So then some people are aware that they are under eating. And then you go, well, how do my wave numbers how do those affect me as it relates to if I'm overeating or undereating? Wouldn't it stand to reason that you would deal with both of those people differently? And actually, we don't deal with both those people differently. We sort of assume that most people just need a better understanding of where they're supposed to be. And so we ask you, approximately how much you're eating, and we give you a written plan based on that, and then we walk you through that plan. And so, as an example, let's say that your wave number or your total daily energy expenditure number is 2,700, and you think that you were eating 3,000 calories. Well, once you start eating 2,700, and you were eating 3,000 calories, in essence, you're going to receive some fat loss from that, right? So if you were overeating, you will ultimately lose a little weight. What typically happens for people, though, is instead of overeating at 3,000, 3,500, they go down to 1,800, 1,200, and that compromises their metabolism. And I'll talk a little bit about that scenario when we talk about undereating. So there are some people that are undereating. There are people that track. And, once again, we just sort of ask you to estimate where you're at. And so if you're undereating, and once again, let's say that you're female and you're supposed to be eating 2,400 calories, but you're currently eating 1,300 calories, what we do is we give you a graduated formula that walks you up through that. Now, this is probably, there's a couple things that happen with Eat to Perform that honestly could be fixed fairly easily by some level of patience. And what I think happens for a lot of folks is they know that what they were doing previous to this, was wrong, whether it be undereating or overeating, right? And so once they come in to Eat to Perform, they get some level of, how many proteins, how many carbohydrates. But let's say that they were eating lower carbohydrate. That's actually a fairly common thing. But this also applies if you were eating low fat. On a cellular level, what you're doing is basically making your body inflexible. And so what happens when you reintroduce carbohydrates or when you reintroduce fats, when you weren't eating those previously, is your body struggles to metabolize those. And so if you were under eating, as an example, you might see a little bit of bloating, slight weight gain, things of this nature, as your body starts to adjust to introducing new foods to your system, right? Now, one of the things that we talk about, and the coaches talk about with you guys as they give you that written plan, which I can't emphasize more how important that written plan is, because that is customized specifically for you and your situation. And I'll say that a lot of people are often a little scared by that, because it seems kind of out there for the way that they're eating, and they will often think, well, this is too much. The formulas that we use are basically the Harris-Benedict formula. That's the main formula, and then the Catch-McCardle formula. And these formulas have been around for hundreds of years. And what they're doing, well, some of them have been around for hundreds of years, but they're based off of the science of metabolism, right? Now, if you were eating 1,300 calories, right, and you were supposed to be eating 2,400 calories, you've been compromising your metabolism for a while. So what we try to do is walk you through healing your metabolism. And so the standard formula, and once again, this is kind of, this changes, depending on the individual, how long they've been low carbing, things of this nature. That's all part of the survey. what we'll do, I'll just give you like the standard example. We take somebody from 1300 to 2400, we'll just add 100 calories, and then we give you basically kind of a graduated formula of how to do that and how to add various foods so you can heal your metabolism and ultimately receive some level of fat loss. And so we'll talk about the fat loss portion. Anything I'm missing or glossing over here, April, because I want to make sure that, as I'm talking, that there's some things that aren't being missed, because obviously you're being asked these questions on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, you pretty much have it down. The graduated formula, they basically are giving the exact amount of, the specific amounts of protein, carbohydrates, and fats that they are to eat every single week. So it's down to, pretty black and white in regards to reversing into the higher caloric levels.
So that brings up an interesting point, because a lot of the times people will say, well, why do I have to track my food? Most people don't have a huge issue with that. And what I would say to those people is, when you are hiring someone to help you with eating, it's the only way that we can know what you're eating, right? It's the only way we can dissect what you're doing. Other than that, we're just kind of guessing. And so whenever you want to see a specific change, you're going to have to get a little specific, right? And so basically what we're going to just walk you through here is kind of Eat to Perform 101. And then in the subsequent weeks, we'll walk you through some more specifics and little tips that can kind of help you. So one of the things that happens often, and I guess, I want to address this right now, because the idea of bloating always comes up, right? That's always a big thing for new people. And the reason why you're bloated is because you have been avoiding carbohydrates for a very long time, or you've been, occasionally people avoid fats for a long time. I will say one thing that happens, I'm not saying it's you specifically, but occasionally someone comes from an under eating background and they go, you know what? I really, really like this idea of eating because I've been starving myself for the last 40 years. And so, they start to see the pictures and people talking about more food, and, they jump in with both feet. And in that process, they gain 4 to 5 pounds because basically their body's not ready. So let me give you an example of something that came up in a webinar recently. We were talking to Lane Norton, who's a well-known bodybuilder, and Lane said that he was talking about, I believe it was Eric Helms, but I'm not completely sure. You can actually look at it. We post this video all the time. But he talked about how Eric had a metabolic rate in the low 2000s. And basically, if you're not familiar with metabolic rate, what happens is you take your metabolic rate and then you have a multiplier, and then that multiplier is how much you're supposed to be eating on a daily basis. And so when we give you your plan, we're sort of estimating based on that. And we'll talk a little bit about some ways that you can get a little bit more specific later on, or potentially in another video. But in 6 weeks, Eric, in 6 weeks of dieting for a contest, they remeasured Eric's metabolic rate, and it went from, I believe it was something like 2,400 to 1,300 in that short a period of time. Now, he was only dieting for 6 weeks. Okay, so if you've been dieting for the last 20 years, then, we might need a little while to kind of get you adjusted, right? Now, in our book, Metabolic Flexibility for Fat Loss, what we walk you through is some level of carb cycling. And, we call those days control days. We've also called those recovery days. But for the most part, what you're really trying to do is keep your carbs at a reasonable level. Once again, this is part of your plan. You don't have to really think about it too much. But in general, what I think happens for a lot of people that deal with some bloating, um, one, bloating is not bad, first of all. Okay, bloating is actually part of the process of building muscle. And so, the fact that people have tried to stay away from being bloated is sort of missing the point a little bit, right? A lot of times with Eat to Perform, we will go to bed, because we've had some carbohydrates, and yeah, we feel a little bit bloated, but then during the rest of recovery at night, you'll wake up and your abs are tight. You definitely have better recovery because you've had an adequate amount of food. Carbs are favorable as it relates to protein turnover. It's favorable as it relates to muscle protein synthesis. So all of these things tend to be fairly good. But what I really want to focus on is the low carb part, because what's interesting, I think, is that all the people that were low carbing for so many years, they had it half right. And what I mean by that is that if they allow for a little bit of processing of the inflammation, that you'll get through working out or having some carbs, around your workouts and things of this nature, and then you use your rest days, control days, to sort of process that stuff, then you're fine. But what happens is, okay, when you first start Eat to Perform, first of all, you're cellularly inflexible, so that causes the problem. And then secondly, you probably work out a lot more than we work out. I only work out 4 days a week. But when I work out, my workouts are dynamic. They're working out at 100%. Most people that start Eat to Perform actually are working out at 60% a lot. And so that's what we sort of walk them through. And, like even on a rest day, which is sort of funny because most of us have actually worked our rest day carbohydrates up to where a lot of people's workout day carbohydrates are, right? And so what you find eventually is that, you can create, this cellular flexibility, but you can also call that metabolism, right? And so if you look at the example that I used with Eric, he would reverse diet from 1300 back to where he was. He would build work capacity through exercise, but just in general, adding in more food is going to be helpful. And then you think to yourself, well, won't I gain weight? You might gain a little bit of weight. Some people do lose weight. I would say that's probably 20%, April, 20 to 25%.
Yes.
And the reason being is that, they've kind of stalled their metabolism for so long that their body actually wants to have more food. They want to do more things, and so that's positive. But I don't want to put it out there like you will not gain any weight. But if, as an example, you're gaining more than 5 pounds, and you don't want to gain more than 5 pounds, then we want to have a discussion and we want to walk you, because maybe your graduated schedule is a little too aggressive, and we'll be a little patient. One of the discussions I had recently with one of our coaching clients is she asked me, she was up 3-4 pounds after like 6 weeks, and she asked me when the 3 or 4 pounds would go away. And the thing about 3 or 4 pounds, a lot of times when you're coming from a deficient background, it'll often be muscle, especially if you're adding more work capacity, you're able to lift more in the gym, things of this nature. So a lot of times people get focused on the scale part. I'm actually not a person that says avoid the scale. I think that the scale is helpful. I think that, logging food is helpful. When you're making major changes, I like people to be, aware. Here's the problem. Not everyone has a great relationship with the scale. And so therefore, they'll struggle with, that. And so some people have a strategy of just checking in weekly. Some people go, you know what, I'm not even going to really care about it. And I think that that's fine too. In that scenario, though, you can't then check your weight a month later and go, oh my goodness, I'm up 10 pounds. And, and then still think, well, you know what I'm saying, April? I mean, like, I think that.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I actually generally recommend, if you don't, I think one of the biggest mistakes that new people make is not tracking any type of data to see if they're increasing in size or increasing on the scale. Now, if they don't have a healthy relationship with the scale, I would highly recommend at least taking measurements and pictures specifically for the reason that you just said. If you're just like, well, I'm just not going to worry about it, just go by how my clothes feel. And then you wait till your clothes are getting tight. And then 2 months later, you get on the scale and then you just completely freak out because you may have gained 12 pounds. But if you're tracking that data gradually, then you can head into the forums and literally there's a coach at your beck and call, almost any time of the day that will look at your food log and say, hey, let's hang out here. Or in some cases, it can be minor little tweaks that need to be made that will make a huge, huge difference overall. So I always recommend tracking some type of data.
Yeah,
something.
I think that that's super helpful. So let's talk a little bit about, how we get people fat loss, right? And so we have to have an honest discussion about where you came from, right? And, for a lot of people, there has been some, that we certainly get people that were overeating, but we get people who are undereating as well. But mostly we get people that don't eat with some level of balance, right? And so they don't eat an adequate amount of protein, or they're overly reliant on carbs, or they're overly reliant on fats. And we try and fix that a little bit. But then you go, well, how do you get me fat loss in the end? And I would say that with one word: patiently. And when you signed up, we signed you up for 1 year. And the reason why we created that plan was because we believe that we need your attention for at least a year to walk you through, the various processes. And so for many people, we'll suggest that they at least go 3 months of trying to normalize their system. And like I said, whether you're, if you're undereating in that 3-month period, you should almost always lose weight. Okay. But the problem is that a lot of people think that they were overeating when in fact, they were just overly reliant, or maybe they had too much alcohol on the weekends, or things of that nature. And they needed some level of specificity. And so what we're doing is we're getting you more of the foods that are going to actually build your system, and then that's going to allow for additional work capacity during your workouts. So how intense do your workouts need to be? I wouldn't say that intense, but it really sort of depends on your level, right? I mean, we deal with professional athletes, and so many of them, for us to get those people results, we're going to have a little bit more extremes. One of the things that we talk a lot about is trying to get your activity level up when you're not exercising. And I think that that's a big thing. I know that was a big thing for me early on, where I just wasn't doing enough. Obviously I have a job in front of a computer. And what I found was each day that I had less stress. I could increase my activity level by just going for a walk around my neighborhood, which usually lasts 45 minutes to an hour. And it was just a nice little reprieve for me. And as an example, right before this webinar, I went to my local grocery store, bought some groceries, did my little walk, And there's a lot of things like that that people aren't doing that they can add to the equation. I think what ends up happening is that people think that they need to exercise, or they need to WOD, or they need to CrossFit, all these different types of things to see a result. And that's not what we believe is going to be the best answer. And so do you want to talk a little bit about that, April?
About increasing your overall, like your low active, your low activity? Because I was kind of confused as to where you were going, because I do agree that a lot of times some people that are coming in just need to increase their, just their low activity in general. I see a lot of people that always question, do I work out enough, or am I doing enough? I see other people who are doing much more than me. But in my opinion, I think that the goal should always be to improve from where you are and to get better. And if you, like what you said, obviously you're eating more, you're going to have more energy, and just to move more, in general, I think is always a good start.
Hello, April?
And yes, I'm here.
Someone signed me out of the damn account. So frustrating. We're gonna have to redo this. It's so frustrating.
I guess they didn't get the memo.
Yeah, I guess they didn't. So anyway, I don't even know where we were.
It's okay. It's okay. We were talking about, as you eat more, the goal is to get better, from where you were, to be a better version of yourself, as you always say.
Right, but the reason why you get better at exercise, and just the very nature of adding more food increases your metabolism to a point. Because like I think what happens if you're a new person, what you'll often think is that we're just asking you to add more food just because, and we're not. We're asking, most people are aware that, they can't just destroy their metabolism forever, right? And so what we're trying to walk them through is the process of how you heal your metabolism. And so what I think happens for a lot of people is they feel sort of painted in a corner, to where they can't add food. And that's an incorrect assumption. They just have never tried adding more food. Now, once again, some level of smart cycling and some level of a gradual plan is helpful. That's why we create those plans for people, right? But for the most part, I think people are a little scared, and I don't have any problem with people being cautious right in the beginning, but at some point you have to continue to push the top end. And the thing that makes Eat to Perform very, very different than most of the other places is we aren't saying to you, we'll often, have people say, well, I've given myself 6 weeks. I think that that's a horrible mindset, because, if you've been dieting for the last 20 to 25 years, it's going to take a while to fix that, right? And so that's what we sort of walk you through. That's why we have 53 coaches. Every single coach that coaches for Eat to Perform not only did Eat to Perform, but does Eat to Perform now, right? And so so then you go, well, how is this going to get me fat loss? Well, in the beginning, it'll get you fat loss, because when you're at a deficit the majority of the time and you start adding in an adequate amount of food, especially as your exercise, it doesn't take much logic to realize that if you're eating 1,300 calories and then you get to, say, 1,700, 1,800, up to 2,300, that will allow you to do more things. You won't feel as fatigued throughout the day, all these different things, right? And so that added work capacity, that more weight on the bar, that more pull-ups, that, you know, longer runs, those things are favorable as it relates to muscle building. And so when you start creating lean mass or filling up some of that lean mass that you've kind of, you know, that's why we talk about bloated, right? Because that's, you know, people go, oh my goodness, I feel bloated. Well, you haven't felt bloated for the last 20 to 25 years because you've basically been starving yourself. And so you're going to feel a little bloated, and that's actually part of the healing. That's part of the thing that sort of makes a difference for you over time. And so that's why we sort of emphasize that. But so, you know, let's say that you've gained 3 to 5 pounds. A lot of the times, you know, somebody will gain 3 to 5 pounds. We highly encourage people to body fat test. And so they'll find, well, you know, I've gained 3 to 5 pounds, but, you know, I've actually ended up, you know, with 7 pounds of muscle. So they end up losing body fat, you know, as they go. And so that's something.
And also another thing to kind of keep in mind, and I think a lot of people look over, is the fact, you know, if you're coming from 1,300 calories a day and you're supposed to be at 2,300 and you make it, you know, 3 to 5 pounds is you have more food in your body at all times. You know, you're going to use the bathroom more. You're going to, you know, you're just eating a substantial amount more food than you were. So you know, there's going to be, you know, just weight, you know, just from food volume, you know, in your gut and intestines, you know, just in general, you know, so that's completely normal, you know, just for that.
Yeah, I think that that's the other thing that sort of goes, you know, unnoticed. I mean, it's not unnoticed to people that have been doing Eat to Perform for a long period of time, is that their relationship with food changes fairly dramatically, right? And so, you know, they can eat a little bit more flexibly. A lot of the, you know, the naughty and nice list of foods that has sort of gone away. And, you know, in general, the the you know, being able to go to date night and then, you know, having a couple glasses of wine and not being overly concerned. I think one of the things that's sort of interesting about logging your food, because, you know, one of the things that we'll hear often is that the I'm still recovering from being logged out of the account. But one of the things that we'll hear is that I don't like logging my food because I don't like being overly diligent about it. It actually changes when you're logging your food to eat an adequate amount. What I often find personally is that, you know, because I actually don't log my food the good majority of the time, but every now and again I'll check in to log my food, just because if I don't, I tend to undereat, right? And so when you're logging your food to add in more food, it actually ends up being kind of a fun thing. And we sort of, you know, I don't think we coined this, but, you know, people refer to that as macro Tetris. And so, you know, you're able to add in more foods that you like throughout the day. And then you know, like we said earlier, you kind of gradually walk through that process. And so now the end game, you know, this is not the end game, right? The end game is not just to just eat, and then, you know, constantly expand your metabolism. It is for some people though, because there are a lot of people. Let's say that you're a female and you're 24% and you're trying to get to 18%. A lot of the times that person will never need to cut calories ever. You know, they can just cycle their carbohydrates and their fats, you know, kind of like we talked about earlier, and they can see, you know, a decent result doing that. But we will say that, and this is, you know, we referred to this a little bit earlier. We were talking about your wave numbers. And the opposite of the wave numbers is the performance-focused fat loss period. And performance-focused fat loss period, to kind of dissect that for new people, is a period where you are eating at a deficit. So it kind of looks like a diet. The difference being, as it relates to Eat to Perform, is that, these periods are, we define them into 8-week periods, and the majority of the time you're going to be not dieting, right? And so what this allows you to do is to be a little bit more adherent, and it allows you to uh, focus on a shorter period of time where you can, really use the work capacity that you've added, and then that added metabolic number, right? So if you were sitting there at 1,300 calories, and you can't figure out why you have lost weight, and you're working out all the time, now all of a sudden you're at 2,400, 2,700. You're eating an adequate amount. Now you can actually use those numbers, right? Cut, as an example, we have 3 gals that were on our Eat to Perform Platinum team. Each one of those 3 gals was eating 3,000 calories. Each one of those 3 gals went into a performance-focused fat loss phase afterwards, and all 3 ended up cutting at a 2,400 calorie number, right? So when was the last time that you went on a diet and ate 2,400 and was able to lose fat in that process? So that's some of the magic of Eat to Perform. So, when you think of what's the end game for me, the end game with Eat to Perform is just looking at the process a little bit differently, and then realizing that, down the road, you might be looking at a deficit. We do have some examples of how you do a performance-focused fat loss phase. It's actually the harder part is walking people through normalization and stabilization of their system, right? But these I've had every single technology problem. I mean, this video is going to end up being useless. I mean, it's just unreal how bad this has been.
It has not been bad.
Yeah. So what was I talking about?
You were talking about the repairing your metabolism, increasing your food. You were saying the easy part. The easy part is to
Right. Okay. And so we did write a book called The Wave Method, and we do have a group specific to the Wave Method. It's not, it's sort of optional for people. If you had just bought Eat to Perform as an example, you would have seen that as a potential other product that you could have bought. It's not necessary to see results, but a lot of people do find it helpful. And so if that's something that you're interested in, you can, reach out to us at info@eattoperform.com, and then our customer service team will get you, the ability to buy that so you can be in that group. But early on, there's really no point in being there, because, like I said, if your wave numbers, if you were under eating, we're just trying to stabilize your system for a while. If you were overeating, you should see a fair amount of fat loss right off the bat. So really, you want to kind of ride this out, for about 3 months to kind of get your system stabilized. I think the biggest mistake that people make in the beginning is they don't dive in the forums, and they don't use the team that we've assembled for them. And
absolutely agree.
Yeah, because the tendency, we do have a coaching program. April's actually the head of our coaching program. It's a little bit more intense one-on-one type of interaction. But it's not, it's not better, than what you would get in the forums. It's just more accountability. It's just more, acute attention. And so in the forums, as an example, if you do your part and you reach out as an, the best way to explain it, we actually have more coaches in the forum than we have in the coaching program. The difference between the coaching program is that we you get to meet in a similar setting like this, where we'll do webinars with you, and we'll have daily interaction where coaches are walking through journals and looking at your food log and all that kind of stuff. But all those things are available to you within the forums. I think April mentioned earlier, if you wanted your food log reviewed, all you have to do is ask the coach, and coaches are there for that. So
one of the other neat things that I think a lot of people don't know about the forum is that there is a huge community support, not just from the coaches, but thousands of members who are going through the same struggles, going through the same victories, just everything. And there's always going to be someone that is bloated after a rest day, and you're perplexed by it, and other people will chime in and give their opinions or their own experiences, from just normal everyday people like yourself versus, the coaches, it's trust the process. It's okay. Things like that, so there's just a huge level of community, there as well. I've seen people, who, they've become like best friends, and they send each other gifts and, workout socks and leggings and, which is just very awesome. It's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, that is actually something that, and it's really supportive, right? I mean, it's super positive. I think that that's one of the things that sort of gets overlooked as we're talking about this stuff. The other thing that happens in the forums that I think is really important, especially when you first sign up, because a lot of people signed up based on the various challenges that we offer, and they want to be eligible for the prizes. In the meal planning group, as an example, we have a link up on how you enter into the prize structure. And then also there are challenge forums, and sometimes there's fun little things, and we always try to keep it interesting as it relates to teams and things of this nature. So I think that that's a good place to stop. Let's see. I'm going to. Okay, so most people are just saying that it was really no big deal. All the technical difficulties. Yeah, but it's still, I mean, I just, I feel like it's unprofessional to show this to new people, so we'll probably redo it at some point.
It was only like 5 seconds, but.
Yeah. So, well, but there's just been a number of things that have happened since then. I think the other thing too, I mean, I don't know if you guys are like this, but man, like whenever, I'll get some kind of distraction, I sort of lose my train of thought, and I get, kind of, it takes me a while to sort of get back rolling. And so that's something to keep in mind. But I think that, what really makes Eat to Perform different, and one of the things, if you look at the success rate of dieting, it's like abysmal. I mean, it is horrible. And one of the reasons why it's so bad is because the diet industry can tell you that, well, hey, you didn't do it, right? You had that piece of cheesecake on that Saturday, and then you totally blew it, and then you left, and, you were off the rails for 6 months. And that's bullshit, right? Whatever system it was, whatever 30-day challenge you were on, whatever points counting thing you were on, whatever block system you were on, there's nothing that you could do that would be that bad. What ends up happening, though, is people will feel like they need to be super rigid and need to be super adherent. That's one of the reasons why when we talk about, walking someone through a performance-focused fat loss phase, And you know, a lot of people ask, well, why, you know, why do you have like that performance focused fat loss phase? Honestly, it wouldn't be that hard to do if people didn't have all that other BS that they've been dealing with their whole life, right? I mean, we have literally like a team of 15 people that just walk you through all the bullshit that you used to deal with, because people feel paralyzed that if they can do something wrong. And I always say, you know, you really can't do anything wrong, because what we're trying to do is establish how you should view your relationship with food and exercise for the rest of your life, right? And so that's what our coaches are trying to help you do. And so in the case of a performance focused fat loss phase, or in the case of where we're trying to stabilize your system and get a good result, I can tell you guys, there's so many of you guys out there. I mean, April mentioned it, and one of the things that I think that she didn't talk about that I was thinking about was that when you start to add muscle, a lot of the times you don't think of how that muscle will look, right? And so let's say that you do CrossFit, which is a lot of core work, okay? And so now all of a sudden, you know, you start to develop your ab muscles, and you still have a little bit of fat to use, right? So your ab muscles are now developing, and so it pushes out some of the fat that you would actually rather be gone. But you actually have less body fat than you used to have before, but you have more muscle that's actually making you look a little different. And so the point being is that as we kind of walk you through this process patiently, first 3 months, you don't figure out like a whole lifetime of difficulty. I would say, you know, 7, 8 years into this, you know, right now I'm doing some glute work. I'm doing some work on my chest. I'm doing some work on my quads, because those are lagging areas for me. And so I think when you start off, you just kind of want to add more food, and that ends up working great, and you end up losing body fat as a result. But you don't end up looking like a physique model. You don't end up looking like the end-all be-all version. But what ends up happening is instead of having fat loss as the number one thing on your list all the time, every single day that you're thinking about it 24 hours a day, now all of a sudden it goes a lot lower, and it'll gives you the ability to be more patient and more understanding and more forgiving. You know, what a lot of people, you know, struggle with is that forgiveness of themselves, that, you know, they feel like they painted themselves into this picture. And truthfully, you know, as you know, a father of 2 teenage daughters, you know, one of the things that, you know, I encourage my daughters to do is to really not think about, you know, overconsumption of food. I really try to focus them more on their activities and keeping their activities higher. And I think one of the worst things that has sort of happened, whether it be boys or girls, is that, you know, at a very young age, we encourage people to be less. And so if we had encouraged, you know, our 17-year-old selves to lift weights, to run more, to expand our work capacity, rather than focus on, you know, whatever little bit of fat that we're using. Like we said, you know, when you're going up, the potential for going up is a lot better and a lot easier than going down. Just like I said earlier, you know, just in a 6-week period, you can really mess with your metabolism very negatively in a very short period of time. And what that means is, you know, like in the example that I used with Eric, that, you know, his metabolism was in the low 2000s, now it's at 1300. That means that he's going to store fat at a much lower number, right? And so keeping that metabolism rolling and mostly not dieting is so important, but it's not something that most people focus on. And, you know, if you're a fitness professional or you're new to exercise or something of this nature, a lot of this stuff is, maybe new to you, but it's kind of an interesting slant on it. But it really does kind of highlight how this less approach, has sort of negatively affected all of us. And we've all been kind of, messed up by the 50-calorie Lorna Dunes and, all this other kind of stuff. And we just try and figure out, well, if I can chew gum here and I can eat a little bit of popcorn here, and Eat to Perform is like the exact opposite of that. And what I think you'll find is that's freeing. And then you have, the support community. But in the end, it's about results. I mean, make no mistake about it. We can get you results, but what we can't do is get you results on your timeline, right? We can't get you results in 30 days or 45 days or something like that, because, it's some of those things that have actually cost you, your metabolism. It's cost you added work capacity. And when we get people focused on, being better at exercise, that sort of changes that relationship. And for some people, that's, a struggle. That's something that they've got to walk through a little bit. And, we're here for that. And, that's what we'll continue to add support for. Anything that you think that we need to cover? Because I know that, next week I want to cover Fitbit and my, some MyFitnessPal tricks and stuff.
No, I think you kind of covered just the pretty much the starting basics, which, we'll get people started. And then next week we can kind of get more into the details of the little handy tricks here and there. Because I think a lot of times just some of the little simple tricks that we can share will make a huge difference for people.
Yeah. But once again, I mean, if I can really emphasize one thing more than anything else, is just go to the forums, you know what I mean? And feel free to ask questions. Oh, one of the things I was going to, don't message moderators, right? I mean, the best thing that you can do, I mean, if you want to have a private conversation, feel free, and you feel comfortable, because there are a lot of moderators that will take those things, but it's much better to make a post because more people will benefit from it. Now, obviously, if it's something personal and, you have someone that, you can reach out to, that's perfectly fine. But I would highly encourage you to really focus on, posting a message, and that way, and using the search function. I can't explain to you how useful the search function is, because we've had so many people similar to you that have asked a similar question. And so you can find not only the answer, but threads of answers that, will cover your question in depth. Any thoughts on that as the final note, April?
Absolutely. The part about in regards to messaging the moderators, if you're comfortable enough to post it in the forum, which I would recommend. If it's not a personal matter, you'll get almost immediate response. Whereas, some of the coaches may, the group coaches may be, in meetings or whatever, and you may get a delayed response. Whereas if you post it in the forum, if you're comfortable to do so, then you'll get immediate response. But I absolutely agree. I can even tell you the times that I've tried to find something and I've posted in the search function, and it was like pages and pages and pages, of just, it's almost like reading like awesome, old magazine articles, it's like, it's got all these little nuggets of gold in there that you're like, sweet, this is great, so it's tons and tons of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it is, especially if like you're sort of new to this, right? And you're trying to, solve the puzzle. The search function is so huge as a new person. I think the other thing that, I want to say, because, we probably should shut this down because it's got a little long, but this is a job we're very passionate about, and we genuinely wake up, some days, thinking about helping you guys. And I would strongly encourage you to kind of nurture those relationships. I would say that, the good majority of people, they become comfortable with April, or they become comfortable with any of the other, 50 something mods that we have at this point, right? And all of those mods care about you just as much as we do. And so don't think that you have to reach out to us, because I'm actually not in the forums all that often, just because I have a lot of other responsibilities that go on. But don't think that, if I can't find April, then, I'm not going to be able to be helped. There's a number of people that, every single one of us goes through the exact same training, right? And so we all have the knowledge. And if there's something that a moderator doesn't have the answer to, we just encourage them to reach out to some of the people at the top, whether it be April, whether it be myself, whether it be Mike Nelson, whether it be Brad. We have resources to kind of answer these questions. So even though we had some technical difficulties, I'll maybe look at it and see if, is appropriate. Someone mentioned cursing.
It was awesome.
I mean, I hate to tell you guys this, but I curse, and I know that probably looks a little unprofessional, and I apologize for that. But this is an account that we use through Google Plus, so we can get so we can upload it immediately rather than having to delay it and then do it as a separate upload. And so unfortunately it's connected to an email account, and someone was checking that email. So I appreciate everybody being there. I hope this was helpful. I think it was kind of a fun thing because, oftentimes we'll get a lot of these questions, and so this is a way to kind of address them all.
Oh, I would like to make an important announcement that I didn't get to make earlier. I did run a mile yesterday and I didn't die. So.
Right. Well, that's a good thing.
Eventually, Tom said he was pretty impressed. So.
If I was Tom, that's exactly what I would say as well. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you guys being here, and once again, sorry for the few problems that we had, and hopefully it came out helpful for some people. And if it didn't, we'll probably redo it somewhere down the line. So we'll see you guys in the meal planning group, in the forums, or all the other ways that you can contact us. So April, do you want to say the last word and just get in the final goodbye?
Good night, everybody.
All right, talk to you later.